We often talk about these huge medical breakthroughs
Yeah.
that are just on the horizon. But what if they were closer than we think?
Oh, that'd be something, wouldn't it?
It really would. And one of the biggest things that stands between like a scientific discovery in a lab and a patient actually getting a treatment
Mm-hmm.
is the clinical trial.
Right.
The big process that makes sure that a new therapy is both safe and actually does what it's supposed to.
Absolutely.
But the problem is the traditional clinical trial process,
Yeah.
it can be so slow.
It can be.
It's forever, and it's really hard to recruit the right people.
Yeah.
They're dealing with incomplete data sometimes, and even with all the money that we're pouring into research,
Mm.
a lot of these promising treatments, they make it.
Yeah, and for someone like you who likes to just get to the point
Yeah.
and understand complex topics quickly,
Give it to me straight.
I know you would probably find all the little details of clinical trials kind of overwhelming.
Totally. And that's why in this deep dive, we are focusing on something that could completely change the game.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence.
AI.
We're going to see how it's transforming clinical trials and hopefully speeding things up.
I like it.
The insights for this deep dive come from the International Journal of Surgery.
Great source.
So to start off, what's really fascinating to me is that the basic idea of AI, machines thinking like humans,
Yeah.
that's not new.
No, not at all.
But using it for something as complex as drug development,
Yeah.
that's what's taking off now.
Right now, yeah.
So AI has been around for a while.
Yeah, the basic ideas have been around for decades.
Wow.
But what's happening now is that there are a few things all coming together at the same time that are making it perfect for drug development.
Okay, what kind of things are we talking about here?
Well, first we have these diseases that are just becoming more and more complex.
Oh, yeah.
So we need more sophisticated treatments. And at the same time, we have just this massive amount of biological data.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
And AI is really good at going through huge amounts of information like that and finding patterns that we as humans might miss.
Right. It's like having this superpowered research assistant or something.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then another thing that really pushed things forward was the COVID-19 pandemic.
Of course.
The whole pharmaceutical industry had to adapt really quickly and look for new ways to develop and test treatments.
Yeah, everybody wanted that vaccine.
Right, and AI started to look more and more appealing.
Makes sense. So it seems like we're starting to see some real progress with AI in this field.
We are. Yeah, there are tons of new companies popping up that are focused on AI for drug discovery and clinical trials.
Wow.
And we're seeing big pharma companies partnering with these startups all the time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we've even seen a drug that was completely discovered by AI that's now being tested in humans.
Oh, wow.
And there was another drug that was already out there,
Uh-huh.
but they were able to repurpose it to treat COVID-19 with the help of AI.
Wow, that's really amazing.
It is. So AI is definitely making a difference.
Yeah, sounds like it. So let's talk about the traditional clinical trial process and why it needs an overhaul.
Okay.
What are the biggest challenges that are making it so slow?
Well, it's a very linear step-by-step process.
Okay.
It starts with phase II, where you give the drug to a small group of healthy volunteers,
Uh-huh.
usually only like a few dozen people,
Right.
and you're mainly looking at safety, like are there any side effects?
Right.
And this phase usually takes a few months.
Okay.
And historically, about 70% of treatments move on to the next phase.
Okay, so phase I is just dipping your toe in the water.
Exactly, just making sure it's safe enough to continue.
Got it. What happens next?
Then you move on to phases 2 and 3.
Okay.
In phase 2, you test the drug on a larger group of people, this time people who actually have the condition you're trying to treat.
Okay.
And now you're looking more closely at whether it's actually effective,
Uh-huh.
and you continue to monitor for safety over a longer period,
Okay.
usually a year or two.
Yeah.
And the success rate here drops quite a bit.
Oh, no.
Only about a third of treatments make it past this stage.
Okay.
Then comes phase 3, which is the big one.
Okay.
You're talking thousands of participants now.
Wow.
And you're trying to confirm that the drug really does work in a larger population,
Uh-huh.
looking for any rare side effects.
Okay.
And comparing it to existing treatments.
That's the gold standard.
Right. And this phase can take a long time,
Oh, I bet.
anywhere from 1 to 4 years.
Wow.
And again, only about 25% to 33% of treatments get approved.
So most of them don't even make it.
It's a tough process.
It sounds like it. And then after all that, there's phase 4,
Right.
which is when the drug is already on the market.
Yeah, that's post-market surveillance.
Okay.
So you're
Sure.
still monitoring the drug's safety and effectiveness, but now it's out in the real world.
With everybody taking it.
Exactly. You're making sure there are no surprises.
Right, because there are so many people taking it now.
Right. And with all these checks and balances at each stage, It's no wonder the whole process takes so long and has such a high failure rate.
It's pretty incredible when you lay it all out like that.
It is. The International Journal of Surgery pointed out that even though we're spending more and more money on research and development,
Huh.
the number of new drugs that are actually reaching patients is actually going down in some areas.
Wow, it's crazy.
It is. So we need to find ways to make this process more efficient.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So let's get more specific. What are some of the biggest hurdles within these phases that are contributing to these high failure rates?
One of the biggest problems is finding and recruiting the right patients.
Okay.
Designing a clinical trial means you have to set very specific criteria for who can participate,
Right.
inclusion and exclusion criteria. And while these rules are meant to keep patients safe
Of course.
and make sure the study is scientifically sound,
Yeah.
they can also make it really hard to find enough eligible participants.
Oh, so you could have the perfect participant. but-
Right. They might be excluded for some arbitrary reason,
Oh, wow.
like they take a certain medication or they have a specific condition,
Ah,
even if it wouldn't actually affect the study.
it doesn't seem very fair.
It's not ideal, and it can lead to delays and increased costs.
Wow. So you could have a really promising therapy, but
Uh-huh.
you just can't find the right people to test it on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the opposite happens. You enroll people who don't actually meet the criteria,
Oh,
and that can mess up the results.
right. It skews the data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So finding the right patients is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, sounds like it. And what about monitoring those patients once they're enrolled?
That's another big challenge.
Right.
Traditionally, we've relied on things like patient diaries,
Mm-hmm.
where people have to write down everything they're doing.
Or like a food journal, but for medicine.
Exactly. Or they have to physically count their pills,
Okay.
or send data by fax.
Faxing in 2025.
I know it sounds crazy, but it still happens.
Wow. So are people good about actually doing all this?
Surprisingly, no. The International Journal of Surgery mentions that medication non-adherence in the U.S. is as high as 50%.
50%. That's half the people.
I know it's a huge problem. And it means that the results of a trial might not be accurate.
Right, because you don't know if people are actually taking the drug as they're supposed to.
Exactly. And it can also drive up cost because you might need to enroll more patients to compensate for the ones who aren't following the protocol.
Right, so it sounds like AI could really help in both of these areas.
It really could. And it's already starting to.
Okay, tell me more.
Let's start with decentralized trials.
Okay, those are the ones where patients participate from home, right?
Exactly. They're becoming more and more popular because they're more convenient for patients.
I bet, especially if you have to travel a long way to get to a clinic.
Right. But one of the challenges with decentralized trials is managing all the data that's coming in from different locations
Yeah, makes sense.
and making sure it's all accurate and consistent
Uh-huh.
because patients are submitting the data themselves.
Right.
There's more room for error,
Okay.
but AI can help with that.
How?
AI algorithms can analyze the data that patients submit, like images or sensor readings,
Okay.
and check to see if it meets the study requirements.
Wow, so it's like having a quality control check built in.
Exactly. And if there's a problem,
Yeah.
the AI can actually give feedback to the patient on how to fix it.
Wow, that's so cool.
It is.
Okay.
So it helps to improve the accuracy of the data, and it also helps patients stay on track.
Wow, that's really smart.
It is. It's like having a virtual study coordinator.
Yeah, I love that.
So AI is really helping to make decentralized trials more feasible.
That's great. Now, what about the problem of finding the right patients for trials in the first place?
That's another area where AI is showing a lot of promise.
Okay, tell me more.
So AI can use data mining techniques
Uh-huh.
to go through huge amounts of data,
Like what kind of data?
like electronic health records
Oh.
or even social media trends. And it can identify potential participants much faster and more accurately than traditional methods.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. So by analyzing all this data,
Uh-huh.
AI can figure out where certain diseases are more common.
Okay,
So you can target your recruitment efforts in those areas.
that makes sense.
And it can also compare a patient's medical history to the specific eligibility criteria for a trial.
Okay.
So you can quickly identify the best candidates.
That would save so much time and money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it would also make sure that the right people are getting access to potentially life-saving treatments.
That's a really important point. So it sounds like AI isn't just finding more patients.
Right.
It's finding the right patients.
Exactly. And the International Journal of Surgery actually highlights a really interesting example of this.
Well, what is it?
Researchers at Mount Sinai Medical Center used something called topological data analysis, or TDA,
Right.
on electronic health records and genetic data to categorize patients with type 2 diabetes. And they were able to identify different subgroups of patients
Oh,
that we might not have even known about before.
that's incredible.
It is. And it suggests that type 2 diabetes might be even more complex than we thought,
Uh,
and that there might be different pathways involved.
so it's not just one disease, it's a bunch of different diseases.
Kind of, yeah. And this could lead to more targeted therapies
Okay.
and more precise clinical trial design.
So AI is helping us to understand these diseases on a much deeper level.
Absolutely. It's like going from looking at individual stars
Uh-huh.
to recognizing entire constellations.
Wow, that's a great analogy.
So TDA is a really powerful tool that can help us make sense of all this complex data.
That's really exciting. So what's the next application of AI in clinical trials that we should talk about? I think it was biosimulation.
Yes, biosimulation.
So what is that exactly?
It's basically creating digital models of biological systems and processes.
Okay.
So you can use math, AI, and machine learning to simulate how a drug might behave in the body.
So you're basically running a virtual clinical trial before you even start the real one.
Exactly. And this can help researchers figure out the best dosage,
Okay.
anticipate any potential drug interactions,
Oh,
and even predict how a drug might affect different groups of patients.
wow, that's amazing. So it's all about de-risking the process, right?
Exactly. You want to make sure you're investing in the most promising treatments.
Makes sense. And there are companies that are already doing this.
Yeah, there are. One example is Verisim Life.
Okay.
They have a platform called biosim
I always am. Okay.
that uses AI and machine learning to simulate the effects of drugs on different organs and systems.
Wow. So you can see how a drug might affect the liver or the kidneys.
Exactly. And you can do all this before you even give the drug to a human.
That's incredible. It sounds like biosimulation could really speed up the drug development process.
It could. And it could also help to reduce the number of animal studies that are needed.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's a win-win.
Definitely. Okay, so the last application of AI that we talked about was in early disease diagnosis.
Right.
So tell me more about that.
So hospitals and research institutions are developing AI algorithms that can analyze all sorts of data,
Like what?
like your symptoms, your medical history, your diagnostic tests.
Okay.
And these algorithms can identify diseases in the very early stages.
Wow, even before you have symptoms.
Sometimes, yeah.
That's incredible. So you could potentially catch a disease before it even really starts.
Exactly. And that could make a huge difference in terms of treatment and outcomes.
Oh, absolutely.
And from a clinical trial perspective,
Uh-huh.
it means you can recruit patients who are in the very early stages of a disease,
Okay.
which can be really important for testing preventative treatments.
Right, because if you wait until the disease is more advanced,
Yeah.
you might be too late to prevent it.
Exactly. So early diagnosis is key.
Yeah, I can see that. And are there companies that are working on this?
Yes, there are. One example is IQVIA.
Okay.
They have a data-driven illness detection program
Wow.
that can assess your symptoms and recommend treatment options.
So it's like a personalized medical advisor.
Kind of, yeah. And it can also tell you about clinical trials that you might be eligible for.
Wow, that's really cool.
It is. So AI is really changing the way we think about disease diagnosis and treatment.
It sounds like it.
Sure.
So it seems like AI has the potential to impact every stage of the clinical trial journey.
It does, from the very beginning of research all the way to post-market surveillance.
Wow, that's really impressive. But with all this power comes responsibility, right?
Of course. We need to be aware of the potential downsides of AI as well.
Yeah. What are some of the things we should be thinking about?
One of the biggest concerns is bias.
Okay.
AI algorithms are trained on data,
Uh-huh.
and if that data is biased,
Yeah.
the algorithm will be biased too.
Right, so garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And this is a big problem in medicine because historically a lot of medical research has focused on people of European descent.
Oh, so the data sets aren't very diverse.
Right. And that means that AI algorithms might not be as accurate or effective for people from other backgrounds.
Wow, that's a huge problem.
It is. And it could lead to health disparities.
Right, because people might not get the right diagnosis or treatment.
Exactly. So we need to make sure that the data we're using to train AI algorithms is representative of the entire population.
Yeah, that's really important. What else should we be worried about?
Another challenge is data integration.
Yeah.
Medical records come in all sorts of formats,
Yeah.
and it can be really difficult to combine all this information into a way that AI can understand.
So it's like trying to put together a puzzle where all the pieces are different shapes?
Exactly. And this can slow down the process of developing and deploying AI solutions.
Right, because the AI needs good data to work with.
Exactly. So we need to find ways to standardize medical data.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the cost of all this AI technology?
That's another consideration.
Okay.
Implementing AI can be expensive,
Oh.
and not all hospitals and research institutions have the resources to do it.
So there's a risk that AI could widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
There is. And that's something we need to be mindful of.
Absolutely. Okay, the article also mentioned something called the black box problem.
Right.
What is that?
So some AI models are so complex
Uh-huh.
that even experts don't fully understand how they work.
Really?
Yeah, it's like they're a black box. You
Uh-huh.
put data in and you get results out,
Uh-huh.
but you don't know what's happening in between.
So you just have to trust that the AI is doing the right thing.
Kind of. And this can be a problem in medicine.
Yeah.
Because we need to be able to explain why an AI is making a certain recommendation.
Right, especially if it's a life or death situation.
Exactly. So interpretability is a big area of research in AI.
Okay, so they're trying to make these models more transparent.
Exactly. We need to be able to understand how the AI is making its decisions.
Right, so we can trust it more.
Exactly. Okay, and then the last challenge I want to talk about is generalizability.
Okay.
So an AI model that's trained on one data set might not work as well on a different data set.
Oh, so it's not one size fits all.
Right. And this is a problem for clinical trials because patients are so diverse.
Yeah.
So an AI model that works well for one group of patients
Uh,
might not work as well for another group.
so we need to be careful about how we apply these models.
Exactly. We need to make sure that they're generalizable to the population we're interested in.
Okay, that makes sense. So even though AI has a lot of potential, there are definitely some challenges that need to be addressed.
Definitely. But there's a lot of work being done to overcome these challenges.
That's good to hear. The article also highlighted some of the collaborations that are happening in the industry to advance the use of AI in clinical trials.
Right.
Can you tell me more about those?
Sure. So we're seeing a lot of pharmaceutical companies partnering with AI firms.
Sure.
For example, AstraZeneca is working with Benevolent AI
Okay.
to develop new treatments for things like lung fibrosis and kidney disease.
Wow, those are some serious conditions.
They are. And AstraZeneca is also working with Deep Matter to use AI to improve the way they make drugs.
Oh, interesting.
And they're working with Renalytics AI to develop more personalized treatments for heart, kidney, and metabolic disorders.
So it sounds like AstraZeneca is really embracing AI.
They are. They see it as a key part of their future.
Makes sense. What about other companies?
Another big player is Takeda.
Okay.
They're working with Prometheus Biosciences
Okay.
to develop treatments for inflammatory bowel disease.
Uh-huh.
And they're also working with Recursion
Okay.
to use AI to discover drugs for rare diseases.
Oh, wow. So they're really pushing the boundaries.
They are. And then there's Bristol Myers Squibb, or BMS.
BMS, okay.
They're working with a bunch of different companies,
Oh, great.
like Reviveman to understand how patients respond to immunotherapy,
Okay.
and Incitro to develop treatments for neurodegenerative diseases.
Like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Exactly. And Sensine Health to advance research in blood cancers.
So it sounds like there's a lot of activity in this space.
There is, and it's only going to grow.
That's really exciting. So it's not just about big pharma companies doing their own thing.
Right.
They're also partnering with these smaller AI companies.
Exactly. And that's a good thing.
Why?
Because it means that the expertise and innovation is being shared.
Right. So we're all benefiting from this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are also companies that are specifically developing AI platforms for clinical trials.
Oh, like what?
Like Metadata AI. They have a platform called Intelligent Trials
Intelligent trials, okay.
that uses AI to help hospitals and CROs run trials more efficiently.
Okay.
And their platform is being used by companies like Launch Therapeutics
Oh,
to speed up the process of getting new treatments to patients.
so it's like they're providing the tools that other companies need to use AI.
Exactly. And then there's Summa.
Summa.
They have an AI-driven data platform that's designed for clinical research.
Okay.
And it has a whole library of pre-trained AI models.
Wow, so you don't start from scratch.
Exactly.
Right.
And it can really reduce the time and effort it takes to analyze data.
So it's like AI is making AI easier.
Kind of, yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so the article also briefly mentioned the regulatory landscape for AI in medical research.
Right.
What's happening in that area?
So right now, there isn't a global standard for regulating AI in healthcare.
Really?
Yeah, it's still a very new field,
Okay.
but regulatory bodies are starting to think about how to address the unique challenges of AI.
Makes sense.
And one of the key developments is the European Commission's proposed Artificial Intelligence Act, or AIA.
Yeah.
And this act takes a risk-based approach to regulating AI systems.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means that AI systems that are considered high risk,
Like what?
like AI that's used in medical devices or self-driving cars,
Okay,
will be subject to stricter regulations.
that makes sense.
And the AIA specifically identifies high-risk AI systems in healthcare.
Okay.
And it lays out a bunch of requirements,
Like what?
like transparency, data governance, technical documentation, and human oversight.
So they're trying to make sure that these AI systems are safe and reliable.
Exactly. And they want to make sure that humans are still in control.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's about patient safety.
Absolutely. And the European Parliament is currently reviewing the AIA.
Okay, so it's not a done deal yet.
Right. But it's a sign that regulators are taking AI seriously.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think it's clear that AI has the potential to revolutionize clinical trials.
Absolutely.
It can speed up the process, make it more efficient, improve patient recruitment, and help us develop better treatments.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is, and it's just the beginning.
Right, there's so much more to come.
Exactly. But we also need to be aware of the challenges.
Of course.
We need to make sure that AI is used responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. So as we move forward with AI in healthcare,
Yeah,
we need to find a balance between innovation and caution.
I agree. We need to be bold, but we also need to be thoughtful.
Right. So I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
Given how quickly AI is developing
Uh-huh.
and all the collaborations that are happening,
Yeah.
what are some of the unexpected ways that AI might change our understanding of disease and the development of new treatments in the next decade?
That's a great question.
And as we embrace these technological advancements,
Yeah.
how can we make sure that we're also prioritizing ethical considerations and equitable access to these new tools?
Those are really important questions that we all need to be thinking about.
It's an exciting time to be alive,
It is.
and I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us,
My pleasure.
and we'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.
See you then.